All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Dan Reed. I'll be facilitating today. And thank you for joining us for how to join a Maine farmers market. Very timely workshop in the fall time, believe it or not, as many markets are gearing up to start on their 2026 season right now. So I want to thank Jamie Lewis, a SCORE mentor, for presenting today, as well as Kelsey Kobick from the Maine Federation of Farmers Markets. And they'll give you a little bit more information on what you need to know to prepare for a farmers market right here in Maine, and some of the considerations that you might have, and how to analyze a market to see if it's a good one for you. Thank you both for joining us here today. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will read the questions off at the end to our presenters for them to answer. And I also want to say thank you to the Maine Technology Institute, which is a very large supporter of SCORE and has sponsored this workshop. So thank you, Maine Technology Institute. And with that, I will pass it over to our presenters.
Dan, thanks very much. Again, my name is Jamie Lewis, and Kelsey Kobick from the Maine Federation of Farmers Markets is presenting with me today. And to kick it off, you can see in the cover slide here, Maine Federation of Farmers Market is very prominent in this presentation, and they are absolutely the go-to resource to learn more about farmers markets. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that organization throughout this presentation. So the collective wisdom slide, this deck has been put together over the last couple of years with the input of many people from the Maine Federation of Farmers Markets, as well as other people with experience in farmers markets. And on the screen here are the two presenters. Again, my name is Jamie Lewis. I'm a mentor with SCORE, but also have been a active participant in farmers markets as a vendor for the last 5 years. And Kelsey, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself there?
Yeah, sure. I'm the communications and marketing person for the Maine Federation of Farmers Markets, MFFM. We're a statewide nonprofit. We support markets with all kinds of things you'll hear about. And I'm also a vendor at the Waterville Farmers Market. My partner and I have a bread business. And before that, I was a vendor employee for about 10 years for a large vegetable farm at 6 different farmers markets. So farmers markets are a big part of my life. It's an awesome community. It's a great way to run a business. People make whole careers out of it. Excited to be here with you guys.
And since you have the floor, Kelsey, if you could speak a little bit more about the MFFM, if you
Yeah.
could.
MFFM, I know it's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are a farmer-founded nonprofit, founded in 1991, originally created, before the dawn of the internet as a way for vendors to share information about marketing best practices, learning how to collectively market and also direct market, which means, producer to consumer sales. And it continues to provide mentorship and information along those lines. We also run voucher programs that bring over $1.5 million directly in sales, and then probably about double that in indirect sales, meaning incidental sales to market vendors across more than, I think, 80 different markets in Maine now. Yeah, we put on a farmers market conference. It's going to be in February this year, February 2nd in Augusta. And that's what we do.
And if you have any questions whatsoever about anything having to do with the farmers market, go to mainfarmersmarket.org. There is just an enormous wealth of information, all sorts of blogs and links on that website.
And I guess one other thing I should say is we don't run farmers markets. MFFM does not run farmers markets. We support them. 99% of farmers markets in Maine are vendor organized and vendor run, meaning self-governed and self-run. But we do not organize or control farmers markets, a common misconception.
Great. Thanks. So what are we going to talk about today? Why join a farmers market? The types of farmers markets in Maine, how to join a farmer's market, which is actually probably the critical takeaway from this presentation today. And as Dan said earlier, now is the absolute correct time to be learning about farmers markets because the lead time into being accepted by a market starts right around the winter time. So if you start working on it right now, you're very well positioned to be ahead of the game at this point in time. What's needed to participate in the market? There's a lot of detail here of stuff that you might not be thinking about. How to succeed in a market, which is important if you're going to go spend many hours on a Saturday, Sunday, or a weeknight. You're going to want to be about a great link that's in the MFFM website that will let you know what markets are actually looking for vendors. And then questions. I think Dan indicated if you post a question, we'll get to those at the end. So here we go. Why do you want to join a farmer's market? Well, it's perfect if you have a startup farm or startup product, you're starting to make cheese or bread or something like that. It's perfect for starting and growing and sustaining the business. You get real-time feedback. You have an opportunity to hone your selling skills. It's just a great opportunity to get rolling in business. There's a very low barrier to entry. Markets cost either, $5 to $40 per market, and if you're a member for the entire, we'll say summer selling season, the costs are even lower because you're managing the expense against perhaps 16 or maybe 22 selling days at those markets. And if you're a day table, you're just showing up for one market, it's typically anywhere from $25 to $30 for that one market. Obviously, you can make money selling your product directly to the consumer. There are very few people that sign up for farmers markets not to make money. So it's a great way to make some money at the same time you're developing your product and develop and grow your brand. There have been a number of companies that you've heard of that started out at farmers markets. And below, there's a couple examples: Burt's Bees, Stonewall Kitchen, 30 Acre Farm. I know in a market that I participated in, there was a baker called Bread and Company, which now has a very well-regarded bricks and mortar business in Portland. I believe it's on 4th Street. So it's a great way to start your business and develop the business. Trial products with real people, free samples. The free samples weren't a big hit during the late COVID markets, but certainly now when you go to a market in the summertime or a winter market, there are plenty, and you get some instant feedback on your product at that point in time. You can learn from other vendors. You can walk around the market if you have some spare time, or you can just go to other farmers markets and see how people present their products. You can learn a lot from observing what other folks are doing and taking some of the best ideas and perhaps integrating them into your presentations. And it's being part of a fun community. My experience, just over that day, everybody checks in with each other, and it's just a great community to be a part of. And then again, networking, make new business contacts, grow email lists, and a lot of that's a function of how well you manage your booth and how you interact with your customers. So the types of markets, farmers markets are actually defined by Maine state law, and the big emphasis is on farmers. Farmers markets are all about local Maine-grown foods. That's how farmers markets got started in the state, and there's a huge emphasis, and we'll talk a little bit more about the types of markets. As Kelsey said, 99% of the markets are typically member-run markets, which are democratically run by the market vendors. So let's say there's 10 or 20 vendors in the marketplace. They elect some leadership among the different vendors, and it probably rotates. And it's democratically run, policies, procedures, that sort of thing. That's probably as Kelsey said, 99% are probably that model. Community run is kind of a hybrid in that you've got a community that wants to do something to bolster, the status of that community or just create more events for family members to go to in the marketplace. So the market may be initiated by somebody in the town council and said, hey, we should have a farmer's market in this town. And so they connect with some farmers, and there you have it. You have a community-run market where the leadership is kind of split between the community and the vendors. And then the last one you don't see much of is a nonprofit-run market that's run by an external group. And the leadership and management of that market is by the external group, not the farmers who are the vendors. And so what types of markets do we actually have? So we just talked about structure, and now we're going to talk about the type. Producer only, the strictest rules, meaning 100% of the product that is sold at that market has to be produced by the vendor that's right in front of you selling it. So that's called a producer market. Strictest rules, no buy-in. By buy-in, it means if you're a farm but you don't grow blueberries, you buy blueberries wholesale from a blueberry market in Maine, and then you sell the blueberries. So it's basically buying in product that you don't grow yourself. So then there's buy-in markets, which really is probably the dominant type of farmers market in Maine, in that 75% of the product that's sold by the vendor has to come from their farm or has to be made, if it's a food product, has to be made by the vendor. And then you can buy in or bring in for resale product from other people who should be farmers in Maine or people that are baking that product or creating that product in the state of Maine. So the headline is Maine oriented, everything's got to come from Maine, and the balance of it should be produced, made by the vendor at the marketplace. And then you've got a peddler's market that really isn't a farmer's market. And a peddler's market is typically what you might find. I don't want to, it's typically that you may have a very, very small handful of farmers, but you've got people selling odds and ends and that sort of thing. Almost flea market like would be a peddler's market. So those are the market structures and the types of markets that we see in Maine. And then this is type of and Kelsey, feel free to jump in at any time. I don't mean to dominate the chatter here. So the types of vendors and members. A vendor member is you're fully invested in that marketplace, and you're expected to show up at almost every one of the markets. And we'll say the typical farmers market season runs from probably late April all the way through to possibly early November. The market that I participate in actually had its last Saturday market. I think it was on November 1st, whatever the first Saturday of November was. So if you're a vendor member, you sign up, you pay to be a vendor for the entire period that market is running over the course of the summertime, or if it's a winter market, over the course of the winter time. A provisional member is really a vendor member, but it's the first year of their membership. So that's why it's called provisional, because at the end of that first year, the other members of that market may say, Joe or Susie, they didn't really fit in well, and we didn't, their product quality wasn't very good, and so we're not going to invite them back for the next year. So that would be a provisional member. So it's somebody that signs up for the full year on a trial basis, the trial being the other members of the market are making sure that that provisional is doing a good job and would be welcome back for the next year. And then there's a seasonal member. If you only sell one product, and we use the example here, blueberry season, if the blueberry season, we'll say, is 5 weeks long, then that person becomes a member of that market, but they're only showing up for the length of the time that their product is actually in season. So again, if you're a blueberry vendor, then you may only show up for the 4 or 5 weeks, beginning late June through the first week in August. I'm guessing that's the blueberry season, just based on when I pick them when I'm hiking and they taste good. So that would be a seasonal member. You have one product to sell, and it's not always available. And then day vendor, guest vendor. That's a one-off. Typically, the markets will run a roster of openings for any given week, and you'll contact the leader of that marketplace or the person responsible for assigning day tables. And if they have a vacant spot, then you can show up and be a day vendor or a guest vendor. And again, in some markets, it'll limit it that you can only be a day table for 4 weeks out of the season or 6 weeks out of the season. Some of them don't limit it at all, but that's
And some don't even have guest vendors. Every market's different, but this is a general overview of how you might find most markets' rules to be set up. But you can't. I just don't want anyone to think like, oh, well, you're supposed to have guest vendors. Some markets might not have a guest vendor spot. So it's good. You got to check the rules for each market that you're thinking about trying to join.
excellent point. And the types of farmers markets, so the type of vendors, you have the farmers, that's pretty obvious, that grow stuff. And then you have a non-farmer food producer who might be a baker, somebody that sells honey, somebody that sells prepared food, people that send, there's a lot of folks usually at markets that will sell meat products. So that would be a non-farmer food producer. And then a non-farmer, non-food producer would be somebody that sells pottery, or somebody that sells jewelry or aprons or something like that. And then a service provider,
A service provider could be like a knife sharpener. You might find people who are like you can bring your kitchen knives to get sharpened. It could also be, once in a while, you'll see a company who's sponsoring a market, and the market will say, you can have a table at our market for a day. And one that you'll see a lot is Anderson Windows likes to table at markets.
Yep.
And that's just because they've paid the market some money to help sponsor their programs. So a service provider could be anything. And you'll also see, like, well, Maine Snap Ed is shut down now, but Maine Snap Ed used to come and give like nutritional education and resources. Sometimes Maine WIC will come and table to help people sign up for WIC or run their WIC apps in their phones so they can access food benefits. Yeah, so you do see all kinds of service providers that may or may not be a market member.
And a lot of times you'll find the community that's hosting the market, is offering a free parking lot to the market. So, there'll be a table from the library to get people to sign up for library cards or that sort of thing. So it can be all over the map. And thank goodness for Anderson renewal windows, because you see them at a lot of the markets. So consideration for vendors: are you sourcing local ingredients? And by local, we mean the state of Maine. Can you commit to 5 to 7 months of a market season? That's a long time, and it starts to be a grind late in the season, getting up on a Saturday or a Sunday morning to put your stuff together and go show up. So it's typically a 5 to 7 month commitment. And then how can you help support your market? So typically, to be a good member of a market, you have to do stuff. You have to do stuff in support of that marketplace, and perhaps at some point in time, be an officer of the market, or make sure you show up in January or February, whenever the market might have its meeting and interviews new vendors, that sort of thing. you should really aim on being a good active participant and a good active part of the community. How to join a market. Okay, we start getting into the nitty-gritty here. Um, you should set goals and budgets for what you want to accomplish there. Put together a business plan. It doesn't need to be real fancy, but put together a plan to figure out how you're going to go about becoming a good vendor at the marketplace. How many markets can you join? There are many vendors that might do a one market on Saturday, a totally different market on Sunday, and they may do a midweek market as well. So kind of figure out what your calendar looks like and see realistically how many markets you can join. Do you want to be a full-time vendor or a guest vendor? Again, it's going to be a function of how much time you can devote and really what your goals are by having a table uh, at a farmer's market. What sort of budget do you have? It's being a participant in a farmer's market is not an expensive venture, but you've got to buy a tent. There's all sorts of other stuff that you've got to acquire and spend the money to either produce or acquire stuff to sell. So make sure you have a budget to know what your expenses are going to be, and then moving from what your expenses are going to be, what are your sales goals? Because again, as I said earlier, nobody joins a farmer's market not to make any money. The sense of community is wonderful, but people are vendors are at a farmer's market because they want to make money with their product and they want to enjoy selling their product. So hopefully, those that are on this call have taken the time to research other markets within driving range and select options. You could probably get to some winter markets at this point in time, but obviously the summer market is closed out at this point in time. But the best way to learn is to observe how other people do things. And again, within driving range, that's your target potential of markets that you want to join. And the vibe at one market, you may prefer to the vibe in another market. Again, all within the driving range. And it's not unusual for vendors at markets to drive up to 2 hours on a Saturday or Sunday to have their booth at the market. Fill out the applications very carefully by the deadline. The deadlines are there for a purpose because the markets need to plan. We'll get to this a little bit later, but typically the markets will have either a Facebook page or a website where you can get any information or pull down an application. And if you can't do it on the website, there'll be plenty of contact information for the principals of the market where they can send you the application. And also consider sending or dropping products off to a manager or the board to sample. In some instances, as I said earlier, the markets have kind of an annual meeting in the January, February timeframe where they're trying to get things lined up for the summer selling season. And in many cases, they will invite prospective vendors that can bring their wares and can get to know other members of the marketplace. So it's always, to join a market, you're presenting your best self and your best products to the people that are going to vote to allow you in to sell with them at that given market. And then again, basic stuff like follow up to confirm the application was received and when you'll be noticed. The folks that help manage the farmers markets are vendors themselves, obviously, and they have plenty to keep them busy during the day. In many instances, people that are vendors at farmers markets do that as a side hustle. So there are people that are very busy and have busy days. So always follow, in general, in life, always confirm that your application's been received and when you'll be notified of your acceptance into the marketplace. And what do you need to join a farmer's market? Well, you're going to need the appropriate food and beverage licenses. Again, it's easy enough to find out what the requirements are through either MFFM or people at the marketplace will share that with you. Certificate of liability insurance, very easy to get and apply for. A tent, usually 10 by 10, tables, weights, and folding chairs. Weights are very important because there's nothing quite like the sight of a 10 by 10 tent flying away. it's the first time I ever went to a market, I thought, oh, we don't need the weights on our tent. I'm glad I brought them because I saw a tent fly away, not mine, fortunately. Whoops, sorry. Cold storage, hot storage, pretty obvious if you're selling a frozen product, like the meat vendors that their product is always typically frozen, they're going to have cold storage. And hot storage if you're selling hot food, pretty basic stuff. An attractive display. Now you get into the selling piece, display and signage. Um, like anything else, you want to attract uh, the potential customer's eye and draw them into your tent because your presentation is very attractive to the eye, and you have good signage that really makes it clear what it is you're selling. Um, Again, there's no magic there. You want to attract the eye, and you want the customer to know what exactly it is you're selling. And you don't want to intimidate the customer against coming in, stepping inside your booth. Point of sale and data system. Typically, people are selling using smartphones and a device like Square to take credit cards, and you really do need to have a device to take credit cards. Many people want to pay using a credit card. Marketing materials, banner, business cards. Again, this is basic selling and marketing stuff, but you definitely want business cards because somebody may come by and want to learn more about your product. They want to maybe learn more about your farm, and if you actually also sell at a farm stand, they might want to know alternative ways to buy the product in the off season, what have you. So a good banner that will catch people's eye and have business cards. And then a small garbage can. Again, it's fairly obvious stuff. You don't want your car or your truck to serve as a garbage can for your site.
And I'll just say about the food licenses, Maine has some of the most lenient, easiest food licensing regulations in the country. My kitchen license for my bakery business costs $40 a year. It is a pretty low barrier, and it's sometimes a little intimidating to get a straight answer about what license you absolutely do need and which ones you don't. We can always help you figure that out. The Maine Cooperative Extension can always help you figure that out. But if you need help, asking somebody else in the farmers market world is a great place to start.
How do you succeed at a farmer's market? Well, we all want to be successful, so here are some hints here. Have a, yeah, selling 101, have a great product, awesome, abundant products. You don't want to run out, and you don't want to have, if you're selling tomatoes, you don't want to be selling the last 2 or 3 tomatoes in the box. You want to have plenty of products so people don't think they're buying the last that have been picked over by other folks. But again, have really attractive, if you're a baker, have your display of the bread just gorgeous to look at. Have your fruits and vegetables very attractive. You want to have good product because if you have good product, people will come back. Be friendly and sales oriented. Put your phone away. We've all been places where the salesperson is on their phone or chatting with another salesperson. You're at that marketplace to sell your products and to make some money. So you want to present a friendly demeanor towards the people walking by your booth. Say good morning, good afternoon, whatever. Don't be staring at your phone. And develop relationships with the customers. What you'll find is there are a lot of repeat customers at farmers markets, and when you develop that relationship with a customer, they will make a point of coming by your booth and buying something from you. Again, it's very basic stuff about relationships with your customers. Collect emails, start a newsletter, ask people to follow you on social media. Promote your attendance at the market. So with your emails, newsletter, and social media, promote your attendance at that marketplace. Any opportunity you have to share with the world what you're selling, where you're selling it, when you're selling it is going to help you. Offer samples. COVID put a rest to that, but as one who loves sampling food at farmers markets as a participant, samples are a great way um, to sell your product because people will be standing in your booth saying, "Oh gosh, this stuff tastes so good," and somebody else walks by and sees it, and they walk in and have the sample, and they'll typically buy something if they like the sample. Be helpful to other vendors and market manager. This goes back to the sense of community that I talked about a little earlier, that one of the fun things about being part of a farmer's market is that sense of community with like-minded people, with a like-minded mission, and everybody caring about each other because they want the market to be successful. Um, if it's a successful market, it will draw more prospective customers and it just feeds on itself. So you want to be a helpful part of that community to enjoy it the most and to make everybody do well. And be reliable and adhere to market rules. The market rules will be very clearly spelled out to you when it comes time to sign up. And you want to make sure you show up when you're supposed to show up. Over that 5 to 7 month season we talked about a little earlier, I know in the market that I participate in, if you're a full-time member, I think you're given maybe 3 absences a year because if a farmer's market has 15 vendors, they kind of expect 15 or 14 to be there every week because if suddenly that 15 vendor market only has 7 vendors showing up, then your customers will say, "Oh, I don't want to go to that market because half the time nobody's, they're missing 4 or 5 of their vendors." So you need to be reliable and adhere to the market rules and be ahead and outside of the season. One of the reasons you're on this Zoom right now is to be ahead of the season, to be anticipating what you're going to be doing next summer with your product, what markets you're thinking about selling at. So it's important to anticipate the future and at the end of the season, figure out what you need to do better or a way to expand your operation for the following season. Or perhaps I've been talking a lot about the summer season, but there's certainly winter markets you could participate in. Kelsey, do you want to talk about the resources on the Federation website?
Yeah, so we have a new-ish tool. It's a couple of years old now. Maybe I'll even bring it up here on my computer. It's called the Market Matchmaker tool, and it's basically instead of you having to comb through every farmer's market website that you can find to find out where you could apply to be a market member, we've made this tool. It functions as kind of a simple spreadsheet. But yeah, let me see if I can share. Oh, I can't. No. Well, so it's on our website under market members, and it's just called the Market Vendor Matchmaker tool. You fill out a form that says what your product is, how far you might be willing to travel. Oh yeah, Jamie's got it. And then some other information. And then you get a spreadsheet that lists all of the markets that are currently looking for vendors, how to contact them, a link to their application, and basically a way for you to find markets you could consider applying to. Likewise, on the converse, it allows market managers and organizers to put the word out that, hey, we lost our jam producer this year, and we're really specifically looking for a jam producer. So maybe that you'll even find somebody, maybe you'll even see a market that's specifically looking for a product that you have.
So when you go to the MFFM website, you go to market members.
Yep.
And then you drop down to market vendor matchmaker tool.
Yep.
And the matchmaker comes up, vendors start here.
Yep.
Click on vendor start here, and this is the matchmaker form that you'll fill out.
Yep.
Basic stuff, name, email address, the days of the week that you're available to attend, seasonal commitment, the type of products you intend to sell. do you intend to sell items that do not originate from your farm or business kitchen? So we go back to the 25% of the product that you sell can be brought in, i.e. it can be bought from somebody else and you at wholesale by you, and then you can sell it. Are you insured? Are you licensed? Um,
Yeah, and
even
regardless of how you answer the questions at the end, once you hit submit, you'll have a link. That's a link to the live spreadsheet that all of the markets looking for vendors have filled out, and it is time stamped so you can see if there's any recent things on there. So it's a good place to just check back when you're thinking, oh, maybe next year I'll try a weekday market, or maybe there's a Sunday market I could fit in. So that's a great, yeah, and it's free for anyone to use.
And then running your booth, again, this website is amazing. It has great articles on the nitty-gritty of how to run your booth, best practices, legal considerations. As I said, there's just a wealth of information on that website. Really, really good stuff. And the MFFM people are great. Reaching out to Kelsey and the whole crew there are so committed to making farmers market successful in the state.
Thanks, Jamie. I will say that the website is in serious need of an update. We are working on it, but all the information is there.
Yeah, and if I could make a comment, so I've spent a lot of time on that website. Some of the blogs are, from the 90s or the early aughts, but the stuff about selling, how to market is timeless. If you would, layered it on in 1900, the
Yeah.
same principles are the same. So
Yeah, it's
um,
human psychology, basically.
human psychology. So don't not pay attention to a blog from the 90s or the double aughts because there's very valuable information. And by definition, a farmer's market is kind of a timeless thing. Um, the farmers aren't selling AI, out of their bushel basket. They're selling real products grown by real humans. And the principles of how you're going to sell at a market today aren't a whole heck of a lot different than how people were selling at the markets 30 years ago. So again, there's a lot of good information. You want to talk about the voucher programs, Kelsey?
Sure, yeah. These are three voucher programs that MFFM runs. They're all designed to boost farmers and vendors' sales. So Maine Harvest Bucks is a food security program. It matches SNAP shoppers' budgets. So people who are already operating on a very limited budget, not really able to make ends meet, they may be receiving $20 to $40 a week in SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, used to be called food stamps. MFFM makes it so that people who have SNAP benefits can come and spend them directly on SNAP eligible products at the market. And we match their spend with bonus Maine Harvest Bucks, and those are just for fresh fruits and vegetables. Part of the reason it's just for fresh fruits and vegetables is because it's funded by nutrition incentive money that comes from the state. We used to get some from the federal government. That has not been that is not there right now. So we'll see what happens with that. But that does bring about $850,000 a year in sales to about 80 farmers markets around the state. Bumper crop is also a voucher program, but this one is tied to your workplace. Your employer can get it as a health insurance benefit through a health insurance program. It's typically a benefit that exists whether or not they're paying for it, kind of like if your employer offers a gym membership that goes with your workplace health insurance. So what we do is we leverage existing health insurance funds through employers and turn them into farmers market vouchers for any food, not for flowers, not for crafts, not for medicinal products, but any food, including prepared food. And yeah, so that we had one employer circulating $400,000 in bumper crop vouchers this summer.
Wow.
There was over $500,000 in bumper crops circulating this summer. So that brings us a significant chunk of sales to farmers markets. Through customer surveys, it's also showing that people who have bumper crop and bring it to the market typically spend 2/3 more of their own money. So it's a really awesome way that we're trying to grow farmers markets and just increase that share of direct sales for farmers and producers. And bumper crop is also, I gotta say, it's a gift certificate program. You can just buy it as a gift certificate if you want to put that on your Christmas list this year, get somebody to buy you farmers market vouchers. And then Maine Senior Farm Share, I think we've all heard of that. It used to be kind of a box program where you could sign up and get a box directly from a farm. We have piloted over the last 3 years a voucher program, a voucher version of Maine Senior Farm Share. And now this past year it was at 22 farmers markets, and we've redeemed over $93,000 in Maine Senior Farm Share vouchers. So it's another almost $100,000 in vouchers for fruits, vegetables, cut herbs, and honey. And the different rules for what different vouchers can be spent on, there are reasons for it. Once in a while, you'll get an inexperienced vendor saying, oh, it's so unfair that I don't get anything for my soap business. But that's the thing about farmers markets. It is collective marketing. And what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If it gets people to market, that's good for everybody in the market. It's not everything is for everyone, but all of these programs do help the markets overall.
Great, thank you. So we're going to get into questions in a second, but these are our links here. Jimmy is Jimmy DiBiase, who's the head of the MFFM, and that's Kelsey's website. And we're going to be circulating a copy of this presentation, so you don't need to be scribbling this down at this point in time. So any questions, Dan? I don't know if you've gotten any questions over there or.
Yeah, first, I just wanted to say thank you both so much for presenting today. I think a lot of people kind of take for granted how complicated it can be to actually have a farmer's market get off the ground and run in Maine. So thank you for going into the intricacies of what that really looks like. We did have one question so far, and if you do have any more questions, please feel free to either raise your hand or type it in the chat. And the one question that we have so far is, what is the difference between a for-profit and a not-for-profit farmer's market? I think you touched on that a little bit earlier, but if you could go into that in a little more detail.
Yeah, I think maybe that came in kind of before we got into the details of different farmers markets. So there might be a nonprofit that's running a farmers market, and that could be like a community-led farmers market. But I don't know of any farmers markets that make a profit as an organization. There are a couple of privately owned farmers markets that the individual who owns the property does make rent income on them. But most farmers markets exist for the businesses that participate in them and the customers they serve.
And I think, Kelsey, you're responsible for a lot of the photographs that I'm cycling through here.
Some of them, yeah, a lot of them are just phone photos just from different markets over the years. I'm seeing some vendors who are no longer vending, but have moved on to their business has moved on to other forms. So that's kind of cool too. I'd love to hear if there's anybody in the presentation right now who wanted to share a little bit about their business or where they're at. Looks like somebody.
We have another question in the chat here, and I think a really good one. This person is developing a product over the winter and into the spring. And the question is, should they try to get started now with applying to markets, or should they have a finished product before they go down that path?
It depends on how much legwork you want to do, right? I think showing interest in a market is always a good thing to do. So you could totally still apply to a market and make your presentation. I will say most markets have their presentation meetings by March at the latest. So if you don't feel like you're going to be ready by March, maybe hold off. And then there's also the possibility that some markets will still be looking for vendors in June or even July. And you may be able to find a market through the matchmaker tool that's still looking to fill some spots. I would say just play it by ear because every market is different and nobody's going to be looking at you and saying, like, oh, well, you didn't adhere to this made up timeline that doesn't apply to anybody else. So,
And they are very welcoming communities. So don't be intimidated by, going, in front of the approval board or what have you. Very welcoming communities, and having new vendors are part of the lifeblood of farmers markets, in
yeah.
that there's always some turnover because some vendors will age out, they'll retire, or circumstances will change. So they are a welcoming community, and don't be intimidated by the process of, getting to know the vendors at, if they have a, January, February, March, you know, uh, annual meeting, where they'll invite prospective vendors there to meet, the other members of that marketplace. They're
I,
fundamentally welcoming communities.
100%, Jamie. I think that's so true of every market I've had experience with. But the other thing to understand is whether or not you get into a market, and this is like one of those horrible dating cliches, right? Like it might not be about you or your product. It really depends on what the needs of the market are at the time, right? So, for example, if you're a pork vendor and you're applying to a really well established market that only has two open spots and they already have four pork vendors, but they also had applicants who fill a need that the market doesn't already have, you can't really justifiably take it personally if you don't get in to that market in that particular year. There might be another year where they decide they do need more meat, or there might be a vendor who sees that application come through and says, well, this market doesn't need it, but my other market does. So I'm going to reach out and make that connection for you. So just keep in mind, like, whether or not you know it, you're always networking when you're talking to people in farmers markets. And please don't be discouraged if you don't get into your first market on your first try, because it's probably has nothing to do with your product, unfortunately, and just about the needs of the market.
That's incredible advice. You may not always know it, but you are always networking when you're talking to someone at a farmer's market.
Absolutely.
Uh, we had a few more questions here. One of them, I think, I might be able to answer as I ask it here, but uh, how do you understand what liability coverage you might need to sell items? And feel free to weigh in if you have other information here. But I think the best way to do that is probably reaching out to a SCORE mentor. Every business is going to have different needs, and your SCORE mentor is going to be able to tell you the needs for your business.
That's an excellent, yeah. SCORE is an incredible resource for anybody running a small business in Maine, and they really know the ins and outs. You can also go to the University of Maine Cooperative Extension website and nose around in there. You can find what licenses you'll need. You can ask somebody who's selling a similar product to you. The short answer is almost everybody needs a mobile vendor's license, unless you're just vegetables, to sell at a farmer's market. And that's just a basic, I think, $20 a year license. And then you might need a couple other licenses if you're selling prepared food.
And if the town that a market takes place in needs a specific license, I'm sure that market will let you know as well. And just to answer the question that Kelsey had asked earlier about the different kinds of businesses that we have of folks in the meeting today, one person had answered that they have a dog ice cream business, which I don't think I've ever seen before. That's pretty cool.
Oh, awesome.
And
I know.
Oh, I was going to say there are no shortage of dogs at farmers markets.
Ah,
It's
No,
almost like the Westminster Dog Show. Everybody wants to bring their dogs and have them prance around and yap at each other. It's kind of fun.
but there, you have to find the right market.
yeah.
And that's the thing. That's been my quest, is to really find the proper market. And it can be frustrating. Like Kelsey, you say it's like dating.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just small business ownership too, right? You're just constantly putting yourself out there and like feeling rejected. But
but um do you recommend, you know, last year I was a day vendor at a couple markets and I did really well, but do you recommend continuing on like as a day vendor like in the upcoming year to just really test it out more?
that's up to you. I mean, if you feel like where are you based? Where
I'm in South Portland.
Okay. Well, I mean, we all know that Portland market is an incredible farmers market, a
Right.
difficult one to get into.
Right.
Their winter market is a lot easier to get into. Um, but yeah, I mean, South Portland is an amazing dog oriented culture, I feel like
It
too.
is, but their market is not large enough.
Yeah.
It's not large enough. So I tend to go to Scarborough. I go to Kennebunk. I'm trying to get into Gorham, but
Cool.
yeah, I just don't know. Is it better to kind of lock yourself into one of those, or is it better just to kind of be a vagabond for another year?
It's hard to say. And with a specialty product, it's you have to ask yourself, are more of my sales coming from regulars or are they come or is it a novelty item?
Right.
So if it's a novelty item, until you can train your customers to treat it as a regular weekly grocery item, it might be better to just get the word out there as much as possible and be in front of a different crowd every other week.
Okay.
But
And do you just do that and like do I go on the market finder, the match?
I would use the market matchmaker tool, and I would also just look up any markets near you because you don't know how often markets are actually updating
Okay.
that tool. But in South Portland, you have a lot of great markets right within driving range, and I would just reach out to each one individually and see
Okay.
what the deal is. And if you don't hear from them, maybe reach out closer to opening time or even right after opening time of year when they might be like, oh yeah, we could have fit two more vendors this week because things
Okay.
are always changing.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I will keep an eye out for your business. That's awesome. I know a couple of raw pet food businesses who do farmers markets. So it's not like it's unheard of to have pet oriented products.
Just add on to that as someone who also owns a business, markets can change. It could be that you go to a day market and that day there happens to be a lot of dogs compared to normal, and it's hard to judge that off of one sample size.
Yeah. Anybody
Does
else
not
want a personal consult on which markets near them might be looking for something?
I don't see any other questions here, so if we don't have any other questions, just want to say thank you both deeply to Jamie and Kelsey for speaking on this topic today. We really appreciate that. The recording for this will be sent out afterwards, including the slide deck. And I want to say thank you again for our sponsor, Maine Technology Institute, for sponsoring this workshop.
Yeah, and thank you, Jamie, for taking the lead on this and making this so accessible for people. It's really
And
great.
thank you, Kelsey. This has been great.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great day and happy holidays.
Likewise.